Hello everyone. Today we will discuss about ethics in research. Our objectives is to discuss the importance of ethics in research, explain the ethical codes in the conduct of research and the rights of research participants, and define plagiarism and identify techniques to avoid it. Now, what is the importance of ethics in research? Resnick in 2007 and his article, What is Ethics in Research and Why is it Important? Explains the importance of ethics in research. These are as follows. First, ethics promotes the pursuit of knowledge, truth, and credibility. It also fosters values that are essential to collaborative work. Research often involves a great deal of cooperation and coordination among people in different fields of disciplines. The important values include trust, accountability, mutual respect, and fairness. Second, many of the ethical norms ensure that researchers are held accountable to the public. Third, adherence to ethical principles helps build public support for research. People are more likely to fund research studies that promote a variety of important moral and social values, such as social responsibility, human rights, animal welfare, and health and safety. Now, what are the ethical codes and policies for research? Given the importance of ethics in the conduct of research, many professional associations, government agencies, and universities have come up with the following codes and policies for research. Honesty. This must be maintained in all communications. Example, when reporting data, results, and procedures. Data should never be fabricated, falsified, or mispresented. Objectivity. Biases should be avoided in the experimental design, data analysis interpretation, expert testimony, and the other aspect of research. Integrity. Consistency of thought and action is the foundation of the credibility of any research work. Promises and agreements should be kept, and all actions should be made with a sincere purpose. Care. Careless errors and negligence should be avoided. Your work and the works of your peers should be critically examined. Records of research activities should be kept in good order and condition. Openness. The researcher should be open to criticisms and new ideas. Research data, results, ideas, and resources should also be shared with the public. Respect for intellectual property. Proper acknowledgement should be given to all authors, cited and sources used in your research. Patents and copyrights should be recognized. Any unpublished data, methods, or results should not be used without permission. Credit should be given to where it is due. Confidentiality. Confidential communications or documents should be protected. Responsible publication. The study should be done with the purpose of advancing research and scholarship. Wasteful and duplicate publications should be avoided. Responsible mentoring. The research should seek to educate, mentor, and advise students. Respect for colleagues. All peers should be treated fairly. Social responsibility. Social good should be promoted and social harm should be avoided. Non-discrimination. All those eligible to participate in research should be allowed to do so. Competence. Professional competence and expertise should be maintained and improved with the research. Legality. A researcher should know and obey relevant laws and institutional and government policies. Human subject protection. Harms and risks to human lives should be minimized. Human dignity, privacy, and autonomy should be among the primary considerations of the research. Now, what are the rights of research participants? The main purpose of the research is to produce results that would benefit the stakeholders in the study. Likewise, the participants are crucial elements of the research and they have the same rights as the research beneficiaries. Some of the rights of research participants are as follows: by Kim 2006, Smith 2003, Polly 2006. Voluntary participation. Any person should not be coerced to participate in any research undertaking. Informed consent. Prospective research participants should be fully informed about the procedures and risks involved in the research. Their consent to participate must be secured. Risk of harm. Participants should be protected from physical, financial, or psychological harm. The principle of non-maleficence states that it is the researcher's duty to avoid, prevent, or minimize harm to the participants of the study. Confidentiality. Participants must be assured that their identity and other personal information will not be made available to anyone who is not directly involved in the study. Anonymity. The participants must remain anonymous throughout the study, even to the researchers themselves. Now, what are the ethical standards in research writing? It is a general notion that in the written work of any author, be it books, magazines, research papers, for a degree program, or even those papers which are to be submitted for funding programs, the reader assumes that the author is the sole originator of the written work, that any text or ideas borrowed from others are clearly identified, such as by established scholarly conventions, and that the ideas conveyed therein are accurately represented to the best of the author's abilities. For a writing to be considered ethical, it should be clear, accurate, fair, and honest. By Colleen, as cited by Rowig, 2006. The following reminders must be taken into consideration for ethical research writing by Logan University, 2016. First, findings should be reported with complete honesty. Second, intentional misinterpretation, misinformation, and misleading claims must be avoided. Third, appropriate credit should be given when using other people's work. Fourth, plagiarism should be avoided by fully acknowledging all content belonging to others. Now, what is a plagiarism and intellectual property? Plagiarism refers to the act of using another person's ideas, words, processes, and results without giving due credit. The following are considered as acts of plagiarism: claiming authorship of a work or creation done by another person, copying an entire written work or a portion of it, including words, sentences, and ideas, without acknowledging the author, failing to put quotation marks to distinguish a quotation taken directly from a source, giving incorrect information about the source of a quotation, merely changing the words but retaining the sentence structure so that the selection or quotes still bears a resemblance to the original source, using so many words and ideas from the original source that it makes up a large portion of your work, even if you acknowledge the original author. Plagiarism should not be tolerated, as the unauthorized use of original ideas and works constitutes a violation of intellectual property rights. The World Intellectual Property Organization has the following definition of intellectual property. Intellectual property refers to creations of the mind, inventions, literary and artistic works and symbols, names and images used in commerce by WIPO 2004. Intellectual property covers two categories: industrial property and copyright. Industrial property, which includes patents, trademarks, and industrial designs. Copyright, which includes published works such as literary works, textbooks, reference books, and other artistic works such as creative design, film music, radio broadcast, and performance art. Creators of such works and intellectual property are given rights and protections, and the unauthorized use of intellectual property is subject to legal sanctions. In the Philippines, intellectual property is protected by the Public Act 8293 or the Intellectual Property Code of the Philippines. Following are the provisions of the code regarding published works. Published works means works which, with the content of the authors, are made available to the public by wire or wireless means, in such a way that members of the public may access these works from a place and time individually chosen by them, provided that availability of such copies has been such as to satisfy and reasonable requirements of the public, having regard to the nature of the work. Furthermore, the Code also states the following provisions regarding copyright ownership. 178.1. Subject to the provision of this section, in the case of original literary and artistic works, copyright shall belong to the author of the work. 178.2. In the case of work of joint authorship, the co-authors shall be the original owners of the copyright, and in the absence of agreement, their rights shall be governed by the rules on co-ownership. If, however, a work of joint authorship consists of parts that we can use separately and the author of each part can be identified, the author of each part shall be the original owner of the copyright in the part that he has created. This is the basis of ownership of any published article or materials in the forms of books, magazines, and the likes, as well as those that are in electronic form. Using these materials, in part or as a whole, in commercial publications such as textbooks, without recognizing the author or authors, constitutes an infringement of copyright, which has corresponding consequences. This act states that in determining the number of years of imprisonment and the amount of fine, the court shall consider the value of the infringing materials the defendant has produced or manufactured, the damage that the copyright owner has suffered by reason of the infringement. Copyright infringement and its corresponding sanctions, however, only apply to commercial use of intellectual property. In academic research, plagiarism and its related acts constitute academic dishonesty and may be cause for the invalidation of a research study and other sanctions of the offender. Educational institutions and academic organizations have their own rules and sanctions regarding plagiarism. Students who commit plagiarism risk academic sanctions such as failing grade in the course where such violation was committed, and in extreme cases, the revocation of a degree conferred. Sharma and Singh, 2011, lists the following tips to avoid plagiarism. Sufficient time should be allotted for writing. Hard copies of all the relevant references should be collected. All references should be read carefully and its important parts should be highlighted. Sufficient attribution should be placed when using the ideas of others. Lines with factual details are to be referenced. The appropriateness of inserting references should be determined. Written permission should be acquired for text and figures copied from other sources. All the text should be paraphrased, that is, written by the author in his or her own language. Copying and pasting some sources while writing should be avoided. If one is not good at typing, he or she can request assistance from a typist. Before submitting an article, all files, figures, and references should be prepared in accordance to the prescribed standards. Fair use. The law, however, recognizes certain situations where the use of copyrighted content is acceptable and constitutes fair use of intellectual property. The Intellectual Property Code identifies the following as acceptable use of intellectual property. Use of works in the public domain. An intellectual property is considered to be in the public domain once the rights of the author have lapsed after a period defined by law, or 50 years after the death of the author. Use of a copyrighted work for criticism, comment news reporting, teaching and classroom use, scholarship and research, and other similar purposes. Reproduction of works as part of reports on current use, which is broadcast to the public. Use of works and materials from the government and its various branches, departments, and offices, provided that permission for use is acquired. Although fair use gives academic researchers great freedom in the selection and use of certain sources, due diligence should still be taken in citing the sources and informing the copyright owners regarding the use of their works. Thank you and good day.